Let's talk about the 2021 NFL quarterback draft class because it's not pretty, and this is the first round only. This was viewed as one of the best quarterback draft classes of all time heading into the NFL draft. And just a couple years later, it has been one of the most disappointing NFL draft classes in a very long time. At the end of this video, I will touch on why teams should really stop drafting a lot of quarterbacks in the first round, even if they desperately do need a quarterback in the first round, because this video right here will prove that a lot of teams cannot develop a quarterback, or they're just not ready to take a quarterback in the first round, and they do not know how to use the players at that position. Let's start off with Mac Jones, because Mac Jones got the rawest deal to me in this video. When you look at Mac Jones, this is the kid that came out of Alabama, and he was an amazing athlete. As a matter of fact, he was a below average athlete. He went into a very weird situation with the New England Patriots. Tom Brady had just left this team. He went to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They had Cam Newton right there, and Cam Newton was just a bridge quarterback with this team at that time. But you bring in Mac Jones. Mac Jones beat him out in the preseason. He comes over, and he had a solid rookie season with Josh McDaniels. He had 22 passing touchdowns and 13 interceptions. This by far would be his best season in the NFL as a starter. He had 3,801 passing yards, and they will also go out there and make the NFL playoffs, which was crazy. They did get destroyed by the Buffalo Bills in the NFL playoffs, but it was only up from here, right? That was not the case. For the last couple of years, Josh McDaniels was a main stable with the Patriots organization. He was the offensive coordinator within his organization. Bill Belichick loved him. Robert Kraft loved him. Some people even thought that he was going to be the next head coach for when Bill Belichick retired, or when the Patriots would move on from Bill Belichick. That wasn't the case. He went on to become the head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Patriots did not see that coming. Entering Mac Jones' second year, you think everything would go up. Unfortunately, it didn't. You had Joe Judge, who was a special teams coach throughout his entire career, and he was a former head coach of the New York Giants, to where he was terrible. And you had Matt Patricia, who has been a defensive coach his entire career, competing to see who would be the offensive coordinator for the New England Patriots. And oh boy, it was terrible. Mac Jones would deal with a high ankle sprain early into his sophomore season with the New England Patriots, and out of nowhere, Bailey Zappi came in, and the offense looked better. But the offense was still bad because Matt Patricia was a terrible offensive coordinator. And you had Bill Belichick do some very weird things with this team in that second year. They did not have a true number one wide receiver. The run game was solid with Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, but they put too much pressure on Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones. And the Patriots fan base would go on and turn on Mac Jones. It was a Monday Night Football game when they went against Chicago Bears. They pulled Mac Jones out the game for Bailey Zappi. Bailey Zappi comes in immediately, and he scores a touchdown. The Patriot fans were happy, and Mac Jones was not. Mac Jones would finish that sophomore season with 14 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions for 2,997 passing yards. But hey, let's fast forward to year 3 with Mac Jones. You bring in a true offensive coordinator in Bill O'Brien, who had a lot of success within the Patriots organization. He was also a former head coach with the Houston Texans. And he just came over from that Alabama team to where he was a very good offensive coordinator in college. Out of nowhere, man, it wasn't pretty. Mac Jones had regressed all the way, and the Patriots ruined and stunted his development every which way. When you look at Mac Jones's numbers, he had 10 passing touchdowns to 12 interceptions for 2,120 passing yards. It wasn't good enough. Mac Jones will not even be able to go out there and finish out the season, not due to injury, just due to terrible quarterback play. They was put in Bailey Zappi, and later on in the offseason, they would trade Mac Jones to the Jacksonville Jaguars for a 6th-round pick. Mac Jones would end his career with 46 passing touchdowns to 36 interceptions as a starter with the New England Patriots. And right now, the Patriots are heading into a brand new direction by letting Bill Belichick go. They parted ways with him. You now have Coach Mayo there, and you're going to also be selecting a new quarterback in tomorrow's draft class as well. When I look at the Mac Jones situation, it really pisses me off, because this is a kid that had some talent. I don't ever think that he would have ever been a top 5, a top 10 quarterback. Yes, he has some interception problems his rookie season, but you saw how good he could be with a true offensive coordinator. I think that he could have been a solid quarterback within the Patriots organization, but the team may start to turn on him behind the scenes, and Coach Belichick just wasn't the biggest fan of this guy. And it's one of those situations that you look at and say, maybe they should have stuck with Cam Newton and just try to get another offensive player on that team instead of going with a guy like Mac Jones, who had a lot of problems coming out of college as well. He wasn't a great athlete, had great accuracy, but that was pretty much it. And he came from a stacked team in Alabama. I believe it was just a terrible marriage overall. A guy that couldn't move around much in today's NFL, cannot read NFL defenses because the coaches didn't help him out, and he suffered a lot on the field because teams just go out there and blitz him for the entire game. Then we also have another quarterback in this draft class that got dealt a raw deal as well. And Trey Lance. See, Trey Lance was the most interesting quarterback in this draft class to me. He was my third ranked quarterback in this draft class, so I'll take the L on that. I had Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, then Trey Lance. The thing is with Trey Lance, when he was selected by the San Francisco 49ers, everyone knew that this kid was going to sit down behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Kyle Shanahan thought he was getting his next RG3. For the ones that do not know, Kyle Shanahan was part of that coaching staff when RG3, his rookie season, when RG3 had a phenomenal rookie season with the then Washington Redskins. But you look at Trey Lance. This is a guy that was limited in college. Not because he couldn't play. He was a dominant quarterback at North Dakota State University. One of the best quarterbacks that school has ever seen with Carson Wentz. But he only played one game in 2020 due to the pandemic. So the San Francisco 49ers had enough with Jimmy Garoppolo. They felt like they had reached their ceiling with Jimmy Garoppolo. They went up and they traded numerous picks to go get Trey Lance. And Trey Lance would start some games his rookie season, and he looked solid. They did lose a game against the Seattle Seahawks, but he looked solid within that game. And then he will also go out against the Houston Texans as well. But he was not ready to play and lead the San Francisco 49ers to a Super Bowl just yet in his rookie season. And the only reason he started was because Jimmy Garoppolo suffered an injury. But we fast forward to year 2. The first game against Chicago Bears, terrible weather, just horrible weather. It's just raining, pouring down. But they lost against Chicago Bears, and Justin Fields outperformed Trey Lance. But it's the first game of the season. What's there to worry about? Let's give this kid another shot. They go and they face the Seattle Seahawks. They run the football up the middle, and he terribly breaks his ankle. And that is when you knew his career would be in trouble, because Jimmy Garoppolo would come back in the starting lineup and they'll win a couple of games. Matter of fact, Jimmy Garoppolo looked very good, but he would break his foot as well against the Miami Dolphins. Fast forward, the last pick in the NFL draft in that year's class would be Mr. Relevant himself, Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy would come out, not only go undefeated for the rest of the regular season, he would take this team to the NFC Championship. And if he did not tear his UCL in that game in his elbow, they would have possibly won that game against the Philadelphia Eagles. But it was a conversation throughout the entire offseason. Should the San Francisco 49ers go with Trey Lance? Should they go with Brock Purdy? Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch did the unthinkable. They would go out, sign Sam Darnold, make Trey Lance their third string on the surface. Then a couple weeks later, they will trade him to the Dallas Cowboys, to where he was now the third string quarterback with that organization, and Brock Purdy would take this team on to the Super Bowl, where they would lose against the Kansas City Chiefs. When I look at this situation right here, this is the type of quarterback that you do not draft in the first round. Trey Lance should have been a 4th or 5th round pick. He was basically drafted off potential alone. You see a lot of teams do this in the NBA draft. When I look at Trey Lance's numbers in college, they were very good, but he played against a lot of weak competition in college. He was never going to go out there and face teams like Alabama and Georgia. He was going against some softer defenses, and he was able to pad his stats. Still a very talented quarterback. Would I consider him a true bust? Yes, I would. For the simple fact that he was not able to go out there and beat out Brock Purdy in training camp, and he could possibly be a very solid quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys. But that doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And I do believe that Trey Lance will get a starting spot at least once or twice in his career in the next couple of years, but we will see. The only reason why I believe that is because he is a first-round pick. Let's go back a couple of years. Carson Wentz had a horrible stint his last year with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's still hanging around the NFL. So a lot of guys stick around because they're a former first-round pick. That could be the same case with Trey Lance, but Trey Lance was a massive disappointment within this organization. And if Brock Purdy was not there within the San Francisco 49ers brass, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch may both be fired right now. For the simple fact that you do not go out there and trade up for a quarterback in Trey Lance, who was a bust with the 49ers. And Jimmy Garoppolo was a solid quarterback with that team. They basically moved on from him just because they felt like they had hit their ceiling. And you look at Trey Lance, it's one of those situations. The team was ready to win now, and he just had to go out there and develop more. Kyle Shanahan couldn't develop him because he runs a certain offense, And at the end of the day, Trey Lance and Kyle Shanahan was never going to be a perfect marriage. You also have another quarterback in this draft class that intrigued me a lot, and that would be Mr. Zach Wilson himself, who was just traded to the Denver Broncos. Now, a lot of people have called me a Zach Wilson hater. On day one, I never felt like Zach Wilson should have been a first-round pick. You guys can go back and listen to the videos. Zach Wilson, to me, was a fourth or a fifth-round pick as well, for the simple fact that he played against weaker competition. He played behind one of the best offensive lines in college in BYU. In 2021, his rookie season started off very sloppy. In his first 5 games, he would throw an interception. And when I looked at Zach Wilson over and over again, I was like, what is this big thing about this kid? Why are they comparing him to Patrick Mahomes? Tony Romo compared him to Patrick Mahomes. The same with Chris Sims as well. 2 very good analysts, in my opinion. But when I look at Zach Wilson, majority of his plays came from outside the pocket. So what teams would do early in his career, they would force him to stay inside the pocket and read NFL defenses, or they would blitz a linebacker in the middle of the field, and he would look completely confused. He would finish his rookie season with having 9 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions. And he would miss some games in 2022 as well, because he suffered a PCL injury in the preseason. But there was no need to fear right here, because they had Joe Flacco. Towards the end of that season, Robert Saleh would say, Zach Wilson needs a reset. Let's go out there and work on the fundamentals. He would finish his sophomore season with 6 passing touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Then the team would go out there and trade for Aaron Rodgers. So in 2023, he was not supposed to start any games. They thought that Aaron Rodgers would come in and be their guy. And the jury is still out on that, because within the first couple of snaps of that game against the Buffalo Bills, Zach Wilson would have to come in and start because Aaron Rodgers would tear his Achilles. And you can hear the air come out of the building when Aaron Rodgers went down. Zach Wilson would finish his 3rd year in the NFL with 8 passing touchdowns and 7 interceptions. It was the best season of his career, but this kid was never supposed to be in the NFL as a starter to begin with. Now, let's rewind a little bit. His rookie season was terrible coaching, a terrible team overall. It was the first year with Robert Saleh trying to go out there and figure things out. He's more so known to be a defensive head coach, so he's not really worried about the things on the offensive end. They had Coach LaFleur, who came over from the San Francisco 49ers. He was a pass game coordinator, never called offensive plays in his life, and it showed within the New York Jets organization. Just a terrible fit with this kid. Horrible offensive line, did not have a true number 1 wide receiver, and the run game was very up and down. But it was very solid when Breece Hall was in there putting in work. When you go back to his 2nd year, the same things are still on the film. He couldn't read NFL defenses, and he would just be a reckless quarterback. That's why he suffered that injury in the preseason, suffered that PCL injury. This was a guy that wanted to go out there and just extend the play and play hero ball. And it worked against the Tennessee Titans. He had some phenomenal plays within that game. But it was not going to go out there and work in the true hard conference of the AFC right now with the tough quarterbacks that they have. And I look at Zach Wilson as a guy that's now in the Denver Broncos. I think that he'll just be a career backup. I don't even think that he'll be the 2nd string with the Denver Broncos team. I believe that he will be the 3rd string. He'll play behind Jarrett Stidham, because Jarrett Stidham right now is a better quarterback, in my opinion, than Zach Wilson. And the next couple of years, you could possibly see Zach Wilson playing in the UFL. Then you also have Justin Fields. Now, this one hurts my heart. I really thought that Justin Fields was going to come out and be a very good quarterback. I thought he was going to be the next Cam Newton. This kid had the physical tools to go out there and be a beast and to succeed. And that could still be the case. He was never put into a great situation with the Chicago Bears until his 3rd season in the NFL. In his 1st year, he didn't start. He started a couple games, but he was the backup behind Andy Dalton. He had Matt Nagy, who was one of the worst head coaches in the NFL at that time. He would finish his rookie season with 7 passing touchdowns to 10 interceptions, 1,870 passing yards. The thing is with Justin Fields, that throwing motion was not going to work in the NFL. He read defenses too slow. The release was too slow. And he was more so known as an athlete than he was as a passer. Now, at Ohio State University, he was a very good pocket passer, but that's different from the NFL. Part of the reason is because you have a lot of track guys that played at the Ohio State University. You're not going to have that talent in the NFL. So he's not able to go out there and throw wide receivers open on a consistent basis. And it showed. And he held on to the football for a very long time. We fast forward to 2022, where he would start the entire season, and you had a brand new head coach and Matt Eberflus. They would be the worst team in the NFL. They would trade their first overall pick to the Carolina Panthers. More on that in a second. But when you look at his second year, it was better. 17 passing touchdowns to 11 interceptions, 2,242 passing yards. So you may say, okay, the passing numbers are still average, but the completion percentage was better, and he did not hold on to the football as long. There's also this as well. He led all quarterbacks in rushing in 2022 with 1,143 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. He did get banged up because of that, but you saw a lot of those splash plays. If you go and look at his highlights, you would say, hey, this kid's a top 5 to top 10 quarterback, but those are just highlights only. He still held on to the football for too long, and he would be tied with being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL with Russell Wilson because of that. When you go to his third year in the NFL, this was a Bears team that had better pieces around him. DJ Moore would be the number 1 wide receiver with this team instead of Darnell Mooney, and he also had a very good tight end and Cole Kmet as well. He would miss a couple of games dealing with a thumb injury, and Tyson would come in, and Tyson looked solid. I think he's a solid backup quarterback with the Chicago Bears. But when you look at Justin Fields, he performed very good down the stretch. He had 16 passing touchdowns to 9 interceptions, and he missed some games dealing with that thumb injury. So you was think this right here: the Bears are going to go with him long term. No. Remember that trade that they made with the Carolina Panthers? Well, the Carolina Panthers would go and select Bryce Young. That would become the first overall pick because the Carolina Panthers they were the worst team in the NFL. The Chicago Bears have the decision. Should they go with Caleb Williams? Should they go with Justin Fields? They didn't even let it linger. They would trade Justin Fields to the Steelers for a conditional 6th round pick, and they would go with Caleb Williams in tomorrow's draft class, the first overall pick. It's one of those situations you look at. This kid could be a very solid quarterback with the Steelers, but right now we kind of know what Justin Fields is. An amazing runner in the open field, one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, but he just can't pass that next level to get himself over the hump. Maybe with the right pieces around him in the Steelers organization, and with him being a backup to Russell Wilson, he could possibly be a franchise quarterback with the Steelers, but we will see. But it's one of those situations, man. This one really stung me the most because this kid really did have potential, but he went to a bad Chicago Bears organization. In the same way with Zach Wilson, he went to a bad situation as well. You could say that a lot about these quarterbacks. They have been selected in the first round. They don't work out. But at the end of the day, the talent has to go out there and overcome all those situations. Just like Justin Herbert many years ago, he was put into a lot of bad situations, but he overcame that. Sometimes you have to overcome the pieces around you, and Justin Fields was not able to do that. Then you have the last quarterback that was selected in the first round, Mr. Trevor Lawrence. This is the guy that people said would come out and he could battle Patrick Mahomes for the next 5 to 10 years. They're saying he's the best quarterback prospect we've seen since Andrew Luck. How many times have you heard that? And some even say he was a better quarterback prospect than John Elway. Now, for the ones that do not know, John Elway is rated as one of the best quarterback prospects of all time. He was a beast coming out when it was time for the NFL draft. John Elway is still one of the best quarterbacks of all time. In my opinion, the best quarterback for the Denver Broncos of all time. When you look at John Elway and his numbers before he came over to the NFL, phenomenal. But John Elway didn't play any games. If he was drafted by a certain team that he didn't want to go to, he was not going to just pull an Eli Manning. He was going to go play baseball. That's how elite his arm was. So for people to compare Trevor Lawrence to him and to Andrew Luck, he has to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, right? Not quite. When you look at Trevor Lawrence's rookie season, it was a rookie season from hell. This Jacksonville Jaguars organization went out there and they hired Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer is one of the best college head coaches of all time. He's the worst NFL head coach of all time. He only coached 13 games. This man was terrible as a coach. Horrible. He didn't even know who Aaron Donald was 3 months after they hired him. He said he was not familiar with his game. How are you not familiar with one of the best defensive players in the NFL's game and you just became a head coach? That's when I knew the Jacksonville Jaguars were cooked. And if you don't believe that they were cooked, listen to these numbers by Trevor Lawrence. His rookie season, 3,641 passing yards, 12 passing touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. You could chalk it up to this: well, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. It wasn't the case. Trevor Lawrence had a lot of good moments. The thing was this: one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, no true number one wide receiver, and the running back that they selected in the first round, his college teammate and Travis Etienne, he missed all of his rookie season dealing with a Liz Frank injury in his foot. So he was already put into a horrible situation. They expected for Trevor Lawrence to go out there and get the best out of those pieces around him. They weren't any elite pieces. You have to build around your quarterback. But in year number 2, it was better. They would be the worst team in the NFL back to back. They'll be the worst team in the NFL his rookie season, and then they'll fast forward to the sophomore season. They'll select Trayvon Walker with the first overall pick. They're one of the few teams to actually go out there and have 2 first overall picks in back-to-back season. They may be the only team in NFL history to do that. But in 2022, he had 4,113 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns to 8 interceptions, and they would make the NFL playoffs. And not only just that, they would beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars, would go on to beat the Los Angeles Chargers in a playoff game, and one of the craziest playoff games you will ever see. It was one of the best comebacks you will ever see. And you did that with a brand new head coach and Doug Peterson, who had major success with the Philadelphia Eagles. So you're saying, hey, they're trending into the right direction. They signed Christian Kirk. Travis Etienne showed what he can do when he's fully healthy. And you had Zay Jones as well. And Evan Ingram had a career year with this team in 2022. Unfortunately, in 2023, things would take a turn for the worse. Trevor Lawrence would have 21 passing touchdowns to 14 interceptions for 4,016 passing yards. And the thing was this, they would start the season not being 8-3. So talent is there with Trevor Lawrence. He can still be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, but he hasn't lived up to that hype of being the best prospect we've ever seen. When you talk about this guy, when he came out of Clemson, he is supposed to be on Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson level right now, and he is not. Some would say that he's a top 10 quarterback. Some would say that he's a top 15 quarterback, and that's all fine and good. But for you to hype him up the way that he was being hyped up, you expect for him to come out and to be an immediate world beater. And the thing is this, it's not all on Trevor Lawrence. It's on the organization as a whole. And right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're in a solid situation, but the reason why they went from being 8-3 and they suffered with all those injuries that came down the stretch, that is a part of the reason to why they missed the NFL playoffs. They can still be a top tier team in that division, but when you look at that division now, it's going to be tough because you have a monster in CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. This is a part of the video that I was telling you guys about within the first couple of minutes. When you select the quarterback in the first round, you have to make sure that you have the right pieces around the kid and the infrastructure is okay. I'm not saying that you have to go out there and you have to have Andy Reid as your head coach. I'm not saying that you have to go out there and have a quarterback in a Dallas Cowboys situation with a very good run game and number 1 wide receivers and a very good tight end and all those pieces. But you want to put your quarterback into a very good situation. We have went away from the days of the early 2000s and the late 2000s where we'll let a guy sit behind a quarterback for a year or two. It's no longer the case. Part of that is because quarterbacks are getting paid entirely too much right now. When you look at the numbers by guys like Deshaun Watson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, you're going to have to pay this kid in the next 3 to 4 years. So you want to see what you have immediately. But look at what the Kansas City Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. They let him sit behind Alex Smith. They let him get right. Look at what the Green Bay Packers did with Jordan Love. They let him sit behind Aaron Rodgers. They let him get right. Look at what the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers. They let him sit behind Brett Favre. They let him develop. And I'm not saying, you push him out there in week 5 or week 6. No, let them truly develop. The NFL is a different game from college. We start to get away from that. Just because a player dominates at that college level and they're one of the best players we've ever seen in college doesn't mean that it's going to translate over to the NFL just yet. The same with Justin Fields. He shouldn't have played at all his rookie season. Matt Nagy had the right idea, but the fan base and media pressured him to put him out there. Sometimes you have to stick to your guns and you just have to put guys on the bench and let them sit and learn and let them develop. Think about the Green Bay Packers fan base many years ago. They were pissed off when they selected Jordan Love, but right now they're happy about it. All those doubters that were saying, hey, why are we sitting down Jordan Love? We don't need a quarterback. Oh, in the next 4 to 5 years, you will. Sometimes it's okay to not listen to the fan base and it's okay to not listen to NFL media. Just go out there and do your own thing within your organization and trust your gut and trust your instinct. In the same way with this as well. Zach Wilson was an overhyped quarterback in the same way with Trey Lance. And like I mentioned many minutes ago, I love Trey Lance coming out, but he was overhyped. And a lot of that is because of NFL media. I'm noticing a nasty trend over the last couple of years. The same with J.J. McCarthy right now. The same with Deshaun Kaiser many years ago. Zach Mettenberger, Bryce Petty. All those guys were overhyped quarterbacks. And the reason why they were overhyped is because the production in college didn't live up to what most analysts were saying. So they overvalued them. So teams would go out there and say, man, you know what? Zach Wilson is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. Some analysts said that. Zach Wilson was not a better quarterback in college than Mac Jones or Justin Fields. You could say that he was a better quarterback than Trey Lance because he actually did play tougher competition than Trey Lance. But this is what happens when you don't develop a quarterback right. And this is what happens when you overvalue a draft class. I hope that's not the case for tomorrow's draft class, with those elite quarterbacks and Caleb Williams, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, and Jaden Daniels, all those guys. But just because on the surface it looks like a great player doesn't mean that they're going to go to a great organization that knows how to utilize them. And that was the situation for pretty much every quarterback in this draft class except for Trevor Lawrence. And I do believe that Trevor Lawrence will have a bounce back season, and he will be the only quarterback in the first round that will have a successful career as a starter. And one thing that is very interesting, if Trevor Lawrence does go down with another injury like how he suffered in last season, Mac Jones may be taking that spot because he is the backup quarterback with his team now. How crazy is that? Two quarterbacks that were selected in the first round are now teammates. But let me know in the comment section below, what did I miss in this video, and how do you guys feel about this draft class? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, when each and every last one, you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.